It can with a lass and it'll gang with a lass. It started with a lassie and it'll end with a lassie. These are the famous melancholic words of James V on the 8th of December 1542 on learning the news of the birth of a female heir to the Kingdom of Scotland, his wee girl Mary. It really was the most depressing gender reveal party of all time. Now, James, he was convinced that the birth of a female heir to the Kingdom of Scotland would mean the end of the royal Stuart line. Now, the Stuarts had ruled in Scotland for almost 200 years. In truth, they would go on to rule for almost another 200 more years. Everyone thought it was going to end then, but then it just kept dragging on and on and on. It was very much the Sue Gray report of its time. And James, he wanted a male heir, he wanted a wee boy, and who could blame him, you know? Because the male Stuart monarchs up to that time, they'd been absolutely smashing it. I mean, two were removed from the position of king because they were deemed so incompetent that they couldn't do the job. One was booted in the bollocks by a horse. One, he died after lighting a cannon and then standing too close to it and exploded in his face. One enjoyed stealing money from the church and burning people alive. One had a guy killed because he was better dressed than him. One was stabbed to death in a drain, another was stabbed to death in a barn. Another, well, he charged like a raging fucking lunatic at the head of a doomed army in which over 20,000 Scotsmen would die. But, the real issue here was the fact that Mary had a vagina. Presumably the lack of a dick would make it more difficult for her to behave like one. And so James, he died just 6 days after the birth of Mary, which meant that Mary became Queen of Scotland at the tender age of only 6 days old. Now that is incredibly young, but even still, she was more qualified to run the kingdom than Boris Johnson. And Mary, she inherited a kingdom that had just been humiliated in defeat against the English, and one in which Catholics and Protestants were locked in a bitter, bitter dispute. Very, very difficult to picture in 21st century Scotland. I know, right?